it all kind of rolls up to this big question, right? Which is like, okay, are more people better or worse, right? And if you're like a straight up environmentalist, it's pretty likely right now you have the position that more people make the planet worse off.
But until the point where more people develop technology that fixes and corrects all the detrimental effects of large populations.
Yeah. And then, of course, I would argue, as an engineer, I would argue we already have that technology and we just refuse to use it.
Like which technologies?
Nuclear energy.
Nuclear energy, I agree with you on that. That if we had better nuclear energy, we'd have far less particulates in the atmosphere. Yeah. Like I was watching this this video. It was really fascinating where they were talking about electric cars and they were giving this demonstration about, you know, if we can all get onto these electric vehicles, the emission standards would be so much better, the world would be better, the environment would be better. And then this person questioning gets to, where's this electricity coming from that's powering this car?
That's right.
And the answer is mostly coal.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what this guy says. And then you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Well, if that was nuclear.
Yeah, that's right.
If that was nuclear, then that would be eliminated. Yeah. You would have nuclear power, which is really the cleanest technology that we have available for mass distribution of electricity.
Yeah, that's right. By far. Well, so funny history here. So Richard Nixon, who everybody hates, it turns out...
I don't hate him.
Okay, all right. Lot of people hate him.
I'm just kidding.
I think if he were around today, you probably would.
I'd hate that motherfucker.
You probably would.
Guaranteed.
Nixon, turns out, was a softie on a couple of topics. One was the environment. So Nixon created the Environmental Protection Agency, right? So this is a guy with like as good environmental kind of credentials as anybody in the last 70 years. He also proposed a project in 1972 called I'm blanking on the name of the project. What the fuck was it? I can't remember. But it was a project for to build 1,000 nuclear power plants in the U.S. by the year 2000. Oh, it's called Project Independence. Is to achieve energy independence. So he said, let's build 1,000 nuclear plants by 2000. Then we won't have any dependence on foreign oil. We won't need to use oil. We won't need any of this stuff, and we'll be able to just like power the whole country on nuclear reactors. You will notice that did not happen. That did not happen.
Yes.
Right. And so here we sit today with this kind of hybrid, kind of thing where we mostly have it's a lot of gas. Now there's some solar and wind. There's some a few nuclear plants, and then Europe kind of has a similar kind of mixed kind of thing. And then in the last 5 years, we've decided, both we and Europe have decided, well, let's just shut down the nuclear plants. Like, let's just shut down the remaining nuclear plants.
Yeah.
Let's try to get the goal to zero. Right. And then, of course, Europe has hit the buzzsaw on this because now shutting down the nuke plants means they're even more exposed to their need for Russian oil.
Right. It happened at the worst time possible.
Right. Exactly. And they still won't stop shutting down the plants. They're still doing it, even though they really shouldn't, because Europe is funding Russia to the tune of over €1 billion a day by buying their energy, and they can't turn it off because they don't have their own and sure enough, Germany right now, they're firing up the coal plants again.
Oh, Jesus.
Right. And they're heading into summer where they need to power the AC systems, and then this winter they have a big problem. They need to power heat. And so, literally, like we're back to coal. So somehow we've done, after 50 years of the environmental movement, we've done a complete round trip and we've ended up back at coal.
Is that because we didn't properly plan what was going to be necessary to implement this green strategy long term, and they didn't look at, okay, we are relying on Russian oil. What if Russia does this? Yeah. What if, what are our options? Do we go right to coal? Why don't we have nuclear power? At least have a plan. We know that they can develop nuclear power plants that are far superior to the ones that we're terrified of, like Fukushima, right? Ones that don't have these fail-safe programs or don't have a limited fail-safe. Like Fukushima had a backup, the backup went out too, and then they were fucked. 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, when meltdowns, that's what scares us. What scares us is the occasional nuclear disaster. But are we looking at that incorrectly, because there's far more applications than there are disasters, and those disasters could be used to let us understand what could go wrong and engineer a far better system, and that far better system would ultimately be better for the environment.
Yeah. So total number of deaths attributed to civilian nuclear power, total number of deaths, what were they for 3 Mile Island?
I don't think there was
disaster.
any.
Zero,
right?
How many were there for Fukushima?
It was a couple.
No, it was either 0 or 1.
Oh, it was one guy?
There's one court case.
How many people develop superpowers?
Not nearly enough. We need to see, once again, we need to get to the X-Men before.
Yeah, why is that never happening?
You want to take a digression? There are superpower startups. Should we do nukes or superpowers? Which one first? These are both interesting.
Oh, well, let's just look at this. What Jamie just pulled up. Nobody died as a direct result of the Fukushima nuclear disaster. However, in 2018, one worker in charge of measuring radiation at the plant died of lung cancer caused by radiation exposure.
And that just as trivia, that's actually disputed. There's actually litigation. That's been a litigation case in Japan about whether or not that was actually whether he got lung cancer. Actually,
because some people just get lung cancer. Yeah,
right,
and
exactly.
people who don't even smoke get lung cancer.
And how can you tell where the lung cancer comes from? And so that's why I said it's either 0 or 1.
Interesting.
Now, the disaster-related deaths, actually, those were attributed deaths to the evacuation, and those were mostly old people under the stress of evacuation. And then again, you get into the question of like they were old people. If they were 85, were they going to die anyway? So
back to your question.
whatever. So look, nuclear power by far is the safest form of energy we've ever developed. Like overwhelmingly, like the total number of civilian nuclear deaths in nuclear power has been very close to 0. There's been like a handful of construction deaths, like concrete falling on people. Other than that, like it's basically as safe as can be. We know how bad coal is. By the way, there's something even worse than coal, which is so-called biomass, which is basically people burning wood or plants in a stove in the house. The impact
fireplaces are
fireplaces in the house are terrible. There's roughly 5 million deaths a year attributed in the developing world to people burning biomass in the house. So like that's the actual catastrophe that's playing out.
And that's because of gas leaking inside their home.
Yeah,
because of the smoke
in the house. And so like that's the like that if you're a pure utilitarian, you just want to focus on minimizing human death, you go after those 5 million. Now, nobody ever talks about that.
Of course.
Because nobody actually cares about that kind of thing. But like that is what you would go after. Nuclear is like almost completely safe, and then there is a way to develop. If you want to develop a completely safe nuclear plant that was like safer than all these others, what you would actually do, there's a new design for plants where you would actually have the entire thing be entombed from the start. So you would build a completely self-contained plant, and you would encase the entire thing in concrete. And then the plant would run completely lights out inside the box, and then it would run for 10 years or 15 years or whatever until the fuel ran out, and then it would just stop working, and then you would just seal off the remaining part with concrete, and then you would just leave it put, and nobody would ever open it. And it would be totally safe, like totally contained, nuclear waste.